nah. I treat interviews just like you just said. Like, you want to drink something, it's relaxed. It's more like a, like a cafe. Like, I like to treat it as people come to my house for a cigarette and coffee, and it's just a conversation, So, yeah, yeah. So, um, yes. First of all, thank you for agreeing to meet me and actually, taking the time. I know that you were just telling me that you are not even sure if the guests that you said that they're coming, and the ones that you were not hoping to come, they are. So it's actually quite nice that you took the time, because I know that during the festival in general, it's so hectic. So I really appreciate it, seriously, because I know, especially for people who are in programming, it's, like, it feels like you need like teleportation machine.
Yeah, that would be nice. It'd be nice to have something like that. But it's my pleasure. I mean, what can I say?
Yes. So, just like for my listeners, because obviously, I mean, most of them probably know what you did and what and obviously like what you've been up to. But I'm curious to like you just like briefly introduce yourself, and yeah, and I was actually curious, how do you feel today? Like, do you feel like you're a bit on the edge, or you're like running around? Like, how do you find the festival this year?
Yeah, so I've started at IFFR in 2020.
Okay.
So on time for the COVID period. So, but 2 years before then, I was part of a special program on New Tamil cinema together with Olaf Möller. So that was in a way the starting point, the entrance point to the festival proper later on. So back then I started with South Asia.
Okay. Yeah.
And then, I think 2 years later, Southeast Asia was included in my programming work, and also genre films from all over the world. And 2 years back, I did a focus program on India. And yeah, this year it is the Bandung program. Pro Cinema We Shall Rise Early Afro-Asian Film Festivals in the spirit of Bandung.
Wow.
So yeah.
That's great. So I'm curious, like, how did you end up actually like going to that point? Because it was during COVID. Like, obviously, I assume at least that it was quite an isolated experience when you first came to the festival. How did that, I guess, grew over time? And I mean, obviously now you explained that you went like just exploring even quite literally geographically and both metaphorically, like further and further, like, from Europe, then to Asia, to Southeast Asia, and to India, of course. I'm intrigued, like, to kind of like hear from your perspective, like, what do you find, I guess, like the interesting in the most in that process, and how now that you look back?
Yeah, I mean, it was, of course, these early days in the COVID period it was not very clear when it will be getting worse or better again. So it was a guessing game, and we hoped for some time that we will be able to do it in person. Then it was decided we have the 2021, that was the first COVID edition.
Yeah.
So we did the competition films in January, February as usual, and then the rest of the program, so to speak, in a summer edition, which was supposed to be in person, which then again didn't happen. And with 2022, it was the same thing, even more dramatic, because the lockdown was decided, I think, very late in December, when we were still discussing films, and I was preparing to talk with Vanya on certain films, and then basically, oh no, it's the lockdown is coming, and it has to go online, which was really heartbreaking at that moment. So. And then I think the irony was then it.
The ginger tea.
Yes, for her. Please.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So, I think one day after the festival was supposed to start, the cinemas opened again. But of course, we had all things kind of lined up for the online edition. That was quite, ridiculous. But well, shit happens. What can you do? So those were in a sense, isolated years because we didn't meet in person. It was really work done from my desk. But with the earlier connections to the Indian film communities, the different ones like the Tamil film community and so on, it was okay for that. The infrastructure was a little bit different, the decision-making process and everything. So then for 2023, I think it was a milestone to really have a first in-person edition since 2020. And also having many more Indian titles, much more space for South Asian cinema and Southeast Asian cinema. Though Southeast Asian cinema at that moment was only at a very early starting point because I took that over from another programmer, so that was, it is still a work in progress, so to speak. Genre films worldwide, which came even afterwards, the same. But what is, and that's the beauty in the post-COVID era now, what is very important, I think, is to travel there. To not necessarily only to festivals, which is usual practice, but really to visit filmmakers in their, hometowns, cities, really get also, it's always a glimpse, of course, only, but get a feel of this part of a certain country, and also, meet people. I'm not a great kind of networking person necessarily, but because I'm not doing the partying thing and karaoke and whatnot, that's not my kind of way. But then meet one-on-one or meet, have a lunch, have a dinner, have a coffee or whatever. So I think that's quite important, and that I did for the first time this last year also for Southeast Asia. And that's the way I think develop relationships, find new people, filmmakers who hadn't even in their mind to go to any festival. So I think that's so there's this contact, this personal contact, and also going there is crucial, I think, in the work. So it's you cannot do that from your desk, at least not for all the time, So it's for a certain period. It was like that. It had to be like that, of course. But good that it's over.
Yeah, definitely. So you keep mentioning like the actually going to India specifically and to other territories of Southeast Asia. So can I ask you which one was your favorite visit then? Which one, I don't know, or surprised you, something that I don't know, something that really stood out to you and you were like, oh wow, I wasn't expecting this.
It may have been actually the first visit to Chennai, when I also met some of the filmmakers, especially Ram, which is a dear friend now. And I went there, nobody knew me. I didn't know anybody. I knew some of the filmmakers. I saw the films, and they were available on DVD. And that was quite interesting because it was like they were very welcoming and friendly, even though they didn't maybe not think, okay, what is this guy doing? Why is he doing it? What is the purpose of all this? And that back then, there was no festival. It was in 2009, I think. Wow. So there was more kind of journalistic purpose, interviewing them. So that was the starting point. And I think, but this experience is not necessarily only linked to India. This embrace, that you are welcome, and this has been, in Indonesia the same, in Malaysia, on the Philippines, in Hong Kong for many years before. That was a different life in a sense, and so it's but that first experience to meet Ram, meet some of the other directors, when it was in a sense a terra incognita, and that was, I think, the most exciting. But still, of course, it's nice to discover new things, meet new people, and yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great. Actually, I think it just, I guess, like when you said that, like you first completely opened in 2023, was my first time in Rotterdam when I visited, and one thing that immediately stood out to me was the big focus on, at least that year, it was on Latin American cinema, but especially Southeast Asian cinema. Did you felt like enough attention was brought to this territory before you started working for the festival, or you think that it's now it must improved once you kind of took over, because it seems like you're very passionate about it?
Yeah. I think South Asian cinema definitely was not so much on the map, at least not in the sense we are doing it now. South Indian cinema was not happening basically, especially not Tamil cinema. So that has been and will always be a focus, because these films are hardly selected anywhere else for whatever reason. As for Southeast Asian cinema, I think there was a certain tradition or trend for around 10-15 years. So with these kind of new waves coming up in Malaysia in the 2000s, and also Indonesia. But that has slowly died down in the last, I don't know, maybe 10 years or so. So I think we are reigniting it, expanding it, working on it. So I think it's still, even though I think it's a breakthrough this year for Indonesian cinema, so they all over the place. But it's a good breakthrough, but it's still a kind of work in progress thing. I think like Vietnam has to be looked, we have to look at it very clearly. And Philippines are always exciting. There's many things are going on, which we're not yet, which is not yet reflected in the program, I would say, in the proper way. But we have been expanding it. And of course, with South Asia, there the pressure, or how should I say, is a different one, because there you have a certain pattern or benchmark, however you call it, but you need to reinvent yourself all the time. So that's why it is a coincidence, but still we have 3 Bengali films this year, which is a surprise to many. So you have to, the Indian, even we don't even have to talk about Bangladesh or Sri Lanka, for example, but Indian cinema in itself is so vast and broad, and I think nobody can claim to have an overview, a complete overview over it. I certainly do not do that. So you might always be missing out certain things. That's always the danger, so to speak. So you really need to question your way of doing things always. Okay, maybe I'm using this or that way, that approach, this research additionally to really try to get a certain glimpse of it, at least.
That's a very, I guess, empowering way of saying that, because, for example, this year, for the first time ever, I've seen not just South Asian film, but also, I'm referring to Makai, also a genre film as well, which is finally, it's, as you said, like it's finally getting the recognition I think it deserves. And I guess I'm kind of intrigued where this interest in this comes from, because I think like everyone has a very, I guess, always very like I don't know, I wouldn't say personal, but like I guess like a specific memory why they started getting interested or intrigued at least into the specific parts of the world when it comes to the cinema. So what was that for you?
That's difficult to tell. I mean, a good friend from Hong Kong, the filmmaker, once asked me, why do you watch Hong Kong films? Because he doesn't like Hong Kong films very much. He's very critical of them. He has more like, art cinema, French cinema. Those are his heroes, so to speak. But I can't even answer actually the question. Maybe there's some connection, which is inexplicable. But if we look at it more, I don't know what's the word, strategically, or not necessarily from a personal angle. We can come back to that in a moment. But I do think that the representation of various Asian cinemas is really lacking in the festival circuit.
Yeah.
It is not about having a 50% or any percentage mandatory or something like that. But I find it very weird because there's this tendency, like how many Indian films do you need to have in the program, and what is the need? I mean, nobody would ask this question about Italian films or French films, So that's sometimes actually disturbing, and I think it's easy to fall back because, of course, most of the programmers, most of festival makers are brought up with the benchmark or idiom of European art cinema, being the world of the festivals, right? Maybe now, of course, with the specialized festivals, that genre films are there, and but otherwise, I think that is the cinema to show, and I think Asia should not be a simple add-on that we need to have something from Asia, but really think broadly and discuss what representation we really want to have, because it's good cinema, it's interesting cinema, exciting cinema. So I think these are these are important questions, and I'm glad that I ended up being at IFFR where there's such a space for it. And for me, I've been connected to Asian cinema since I was 16, 17 years old. So I started writing and doing in a very low-key ways, doing festival stuff with friends, doing a magazine and this and that. So even in academia, I studied film, theater and TV, and then Chinese studies, so sinology. So it was always part of my life. Of course, it's changed a little bit from more the East Asian side to the South Asian, now Southeast Asian side. But nevertheless, there's a connection in some way. Whatever it is, as I said, inexplicable. But it is, I think, important to look at these films seriously and not see them only because we have to have a certain amount of representation of this cinema.
Thank you for sharing that. I really, really appreciate it because it's such a. I feel like, I had a little bit of a glimpse what kind of draw you into cinema, and I find it a very beautiful trait because I think oftentimes, especially us who are so invested in the trends of the industry, working on the festivals, and I think you oftentimes have to remind yourself that why did you even started doing this in the first place, because you could have done anything else, so I find that really a privilege to actually also, and for my listeners as well. So I really appreciate that. I mean, for example, and also I really love the fact that you refer to that you don't want Asian cinema to be treated as a secondary, I don't know, puppetry format, that it's not, meant to be that in the first place, For example, back home for the first time, I've seen a Taiwanese, a film from Thailand, because in 20 years they never selected a film from Thailand at all. And it's so obvious, and I just genuinely want to thank you for actually advocating for doing that, because that's the reason I think also people feel very welcomed in Rotterdam, because it's such a big focus on Asian, but especially specifically on Southeast Asian cinema. So, yeah, but I'm curious, in that being said, I would like to maybe know, how was selection process this year from your perspective? Was it in comparison, I guess, since you started?
How should I answer that? It was quite exhausting, I would say, especially with the focus program included. So, and Let me think. How to put it best. I think we lost a few films which I would have liked to have in the program, but of course you always lose something. That is you know that is the process. That's how it works. But overall, how it came together eventually, I'm actually very happy. Of course, you always can push it further, and in this process, you can do things better. And but otherwise, I would say eventually we made a great program. I would say, but. You know, especially in those final weeks when the slots are getting less and less and less, then it creates headaches. You know, where to go, what is necessary, what we must have. So this gets more difficult. You know, but I think it's every year the same. So it's not in a crucial way different, I would say. You know. So and of course then, you know, latecomers come in, and then it's a question: can everybody see them? Can everybody watch them at this late stage? So it gets always a little bit more complicated because we start in an easy way, and there's so much space always. We can, you know, select this and that and that. So yes, naturally then towards the end it gets really like, okay, do we want to have this? Do you want to have it? Do you want to have it? So it's, yeah. But I think we compromised in a way which made sense.
Yeah. And that being said, I'm curious, like in comparison to the last 2 years that you've been working, what are you particularly proud of that you achieved in this programming this year?
I think the most important thing is the Asian films which are related to the communist purge in 1965, and also to that connected the rediscovery, even though to be very honest, it was discovered by other people, so we were not really, we are happy to handle it now and celebrate it, but the rediscovery of Turang. So which is also related to that. This leftist cinema and this film was not shown for 50 years or so. So that is something which I think, and of course it came together by chance, and that is actually the beauty of programming when suddenly, you know, there are films coming together which are communicating with each other. So because I think how Olaf certainly also and I treat programming, it's not only select a number of films, but try to select,
A little break.
Yeah.
Bless you.
Thank you. So to select a program which is telling a story maybe, and where films are in communication with each other, let's say. So and that's happened to be quite beautiful actually. So we have Shaping the Future, we have Govok, we have Whispers in the Dabbas, we have Turang, and we have Bakhtiar, the documentary on the director of Turang.
Yeah.
So this you cannot plan, because I think sometimes even filmmakers have a wrong idea about how programming works. I mean, for example, the 3 big Tamil films which were shown last year, that was not some conscious decision. I mean, especially with these big films, it is a you know, they have a release plan. They eye for the theatrical release in India, in Tamil Nadu. So that just came together in some way. Of course, you pursue certain ideas sometimes, and you think, okay, we can go that way, we can look at that. But again, also the Bengali films this year, this happened like it. I was following the directors, and you know, suddenly they had a film, you know, at the same time, basically, right? So it is it is intuition, I think, which is important. That you see, okay, this is some line I can, in that I think in that direction this year, because there are some things coming up, and these are not things which can be planned. That's not possible, I would say.
No, that's the beauty of programming. Like it's actually making a story of, and having that, I guess, viewership experience also. I'm kind of like curious to know, have you already seen, or you're excited yet to see someone from the Southeast Asian cinema that you're really looking forward to speak to?
Oh, definitely Hanung Bramantyo, the director of Govok. Of course, Garin Nugroho, who I've been in touch with email, but still, that's why we are kind of re-establishing these connections and relationships. So that's very important, and because I think also Hanung was not represented, widely in festivals, to say the least. I mean, he's one of the top mainstream directors in Indonesia. So that's quite interesting to have them here. And also the Bangladeshi film K.L.A.R.A by Giyasuddin Selim, who also, I just read about this film that it's been successful, and then I found the trailer interesting. Sometimes you have a superficial way of getting to films. It's a poster. We had last year's film Riptide, where I saw only a poster on Facebook. I thought, this might be something. Of course, it might be nothing in the end. You try things and go certain ways. But also in the case of K.L.A.R.A, it was like, okay, something, hooked me. And then I was, it's a very interesting musical kind of melodrama, historical melodrama, how the film is using kind of folk traditional songs in the film, how it interweaves them with the storytelling. So that is something, you need to, you need to look, actually. It's actually a very simple thing. You need to be on the lookout every time. Every post, you need to do the very boring research on the internet. Of course, then listening to filmmakers, what is coming up, and so it's,
Great. And are you mostly, I'm assuming that you mostly are in the selection committee for the features, but are you also equally invested into the shorts as well from this territory as well?
No, not at all, which is also good, because it would be really overwhelming, I must say. I get quite often actually shorts, and I'm happy to forward them, but I have no power whatsoever, and I don't want to have. I mean, these are the colleagues, and they have their own taste and mind, which is totally fine. And even if I'm kind of suggesting something, or say, okay, you watch this is good, it might be heartbreaking then for me if the film is not selected. So I think the heartbreak is already there with the features. That is enough. So let's let's have the colleagues do their job on the shorts.
And have their heartbreak.
Yeah, that's their own thing then. That's their own problem. So therefore, I'm happy to forward it, but that's it. That's I do not know more about it.
Yeah. No, I was asking because our colleague Quinn is, for example, doing both. So I was curious if you were also involved as well, because I was thinking, oh my god, that must be so exhausting, already having such a responsibility. But to go back to you, I'm kind of intrigued because you referred to Vietnam previously, and I guess, are you thinking about right now what other territories, because that's something, for example, I noticed that maybe films from Vietnam would be nice to see more in the program, but also in general in festivals. Is there any, I guess, specific maybe taste, or not a taste, but actually rather a region perhaps in Southeast Asian, because it could be just a region as well, or a country, or even an island, that you were like, oh wow, but there, no one sends films from there, and you want to see them?
I think the industry is developing in Vietnam, so we need to have a look at that. The horror film we have this year is a starting point for that. at the same time, I think also the Vietnamese film in the Bandung program is the wartime North Vietnamese, communist Vietnamese film is very interesting. So I'm also hooked on trying to check with the archive what else is there to do something. I don't know if next year or the year after or whatever. So I think Vietnamese cinema has to. We need to look at it very seriously in the coming years. And otherwise, I think what is important, and that's I think also a little bit trickier to do, is you have these countries like Indonesia and Philippines, which are consisting of so many different islands and different, different subcultures or however you call it. So I think sometimes the focus is pretty much on the mainstream, on the main islands maybe. So to try to get something more from the part of the film culture which is not that well known. That is something I think we need to look at also seriously, or I need to look at it then eventually. Yeah.
Well, you have time, the festival is just on the way and you'll see how, what comes to your way, literally.
Yeah.
But I'm curious because obviously I'm sure that there is patterns and common themes and, for example, in Taiwan and in Thailand there is a big focus on family dramas and, and in India I noticed that there is quite a lot of focus on, crime, but also the love stories as well. Just a couple of it's very vague description, but there's a lot of more films if you look at it. I mean, I could make a whole podcast just about that. So I'm kind of curious to hear from your perspectives, being really I hope I can say it safely, correctly. A huge fan. What I guess themes or things you are hoping to see in the future, and that you notice that it's kind of repeating in the Southeast Asian cinema. There's something that you were like, oh, but maybe I would love to see maybe something a bit different from, I don't know, from Sri Lanka. They've been doing mostly this and that, because if we go into it, we are very aware of the time. So yes.
Yeah, I think Sri Lanka is a problematic case in that sense. I'm certainly the last person to say anything about what the Sri Lankan filmmakers should, do, and what films should they, what subject they should, make their films about. But a more variety would be, I think, very important. And I also think that we have been working on that. It has not been realized in the program yet. But I think to have a better representation of different types of cinema from Sri Lanka, I think for India or many other countries, there is always a broad variety of different things, because I'm not bound to certain aesthetics or certain genres. I really don't care. It can be anything. It can be a horror film, it can be a musical, it can be a musical horror film, or everything in between. It can be experimental, it can be more traditional art house film, narrative film, mainstream film. So it's but I think it's, again, you need to look at these things and seek them out, and I think you will find them. I think it's rarely that film history or films are hidden in any sense. So it's a hidden film history. It's to me, and also I think to Olaf, who coined this saying in a way, that everything is there for us to see. We just have to see it and kind of organize it, So that's important.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's such a beautiful way of saying it. We have a little bit more time. A few minutes. Okay, we will start wrapping up slowly. I guess, we could go on into this for a long time, and I actually do want to, even once we finish the episode, to discuss more about it, because when I was reading also about your work and what you do, and I was like, oh my God, this is encyclopedia for Southeast Asian cinema, and where was I? because I always had a passion, I guess, for it, but I never just got into it so much, and now I'm hooked and I'm not going back from it. It's kind of like, okay, there is no back, the doors are closed. So, that being said, I'm curious because obviously you've come a long way. You've faced probably a lot of challenges, and also you maybe had some doubts and things. What would you say, like, I guess, to your 16-year-old version of yourself, like right now, like if you just saw him, like just like myself, for a coffee, like what would you tell him?
Don't do film studies. The academic way is really difficult, really tough. So have a proper job, maybe. I think that's the most important thing I would say to myself then, because it was not a waste of time. I think academic thinking has its worth without any doubt. But otherwise, I don't know. I cannot think in these terms in this way. I mean, what happened. It could have been better. It could have been faster. I was not looking for a career. I was doing things just for fun. So I'm not a specialist or I'm not a professional. I'm just doing things, and like for example, all these researchers who were also, I'm happy to have them here for the Bandung program, know much more than I do about the subjects, various subjects related to those programs, the festivals, and so on. So it's. But I think in that different position, where you're in between, the academic to more traditional film journalistic or film critical thinking, where you see also programming as a fun thing, also to give some people to discover films and things. I think it's a good position because of course you question yourself all the time. At least I do. If that film was right, and this composition of films was okay and could be made better, whatever. But I think it gives you a different perspective, which is not aligned with anything specific or rigid. I think so. That is so. You need to be flexible. You need to be mobile. You need to. Yeah, you need to also exactly reflect yourself all the time, and then also go into different directions and develop and evolve, I think. Yeah.
I don't know how much time we have left. Do we?
No, not really.
Not really. Well,
Sorry.
it's ooh.
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. I'm fine.
You're fine.
Yes.
I did this actually the second time today already.
Oh, really?
It was also a ginger tea. In another location. I'm really sorry.
Don't worry. Well, I'm gonna cut that part, but don't worry. Thank you so much. Honestly, I have so much energy right now. It was such a joy to talk to you, and I hope you did too.
Thank you very much as well. It was a pleasure.
Ciao, ciao.